There it is. Jeff Passan with the breaking tweet. The Mets have acquired all-star right-hander Freddy Peralta in a trade with the Milwaukee Brewers. Sources tell ESPN. Deal is done. Top prospects, Jet Williams and Brandon Sproat, headed to Milwaukee. One more big league picture. We'll head to the Mets. We got a report just a second ago that is going to be Tobias Myers. Man, oh man. Gotta love that. This is a great get for the Mets. They needed someone for the top of the rotation. They needed someone consistent they could hand the ball to every fifth day. They got upside there. You know, obviously Sproat no longer with them, but they got good upside with McLean, Tong, bounce back candidates like Sean Manaea. You got some good floor there with Clay Holmes, David Peterson. That's a good looking rotation there for the New York Mets with Peralta at the top, but they had a lot of issues with injuries last year, consistency. They just ran out of gas in the second half, and that's why you saw them plummet in the second half in September the way they did. This is, I think, exactly the kind of the guy the Mets needed to get. Now, would you have liked for the Mets to acquire, say, someone with more control? Maybe you could, Mackenzie Gore, obviously Tarek Skubal. Well, no, I take that back. Tarek Skubal would only be a rental. But you can make the exception there. It's obviously Tarek Skubal. But, sure, you would always want someone with a bit more control. Joe Ryan, I thought that could have been someone. But this just makes a lot of sense to me. And I think for the Brewers, sure, they are trading within the National League here, a team that, who knows, maybe they could run into in the postseason. I think there is a chance, Freddy Peralta ends up pitching against the Brewers in the postseason. We'll see here. But I like it for the Brewers a lot. They're getting good talent. Jet Williams, he fits into their organization a little bit better. Brandon Sproat, high upside arm for the Brewers. They've done great with guys like that. He's got a good amount of pitches, good velo, good changeup, decent breaking stuff as well. A guy with good stuff, with good upside. He's going to fit very well into the Brewers organization. The Padres, they were involved for Peralta. We had gotten a report a little bit ago. The Padres had shown some interest. My first reaction to this was maybe they were trying to drive up the price for the Dodgers. Who knows? Maybe that ended up happening a little bit, and that's where the Mets said, all right, you know what? We got guys that we think are the best for you to take back. And I agree. The Dodgers, sure, they obviously got a lot of talent over there. But when it comes to a high-end pitcher, I think Sproat was probably the best the Brewers were going to get. It's kind of how I think. Tong, it would have been great if they could have gotten him, but Sproat, I don't think it was bad at all. I think it's a great get for them. Back last year at AAA. Now, sure, the ERA, it did jump a little bit, 4.24, but back in 2024, he was looking really solid. AA, those numbers definitely jumped a little bit in AAA, but those AA numbers were looking really good. 2.45 ERA over the 11 starts, had 77 strikeouts over the 62 and a third innings. This is a guy that has shown potential. I think, just getting him to be a bit more consistent is going to be the key, but the Brewers have shown that. You just take a look at what the Brewers did this past year with someone like Quinn Priester. What the heck was, they got a great year out of Quinn freaking Priester. And now, you're going to have a guy like Sproat. What a good-looking rotation here for the Brewers. Listen, I know we're talking Freddy Peralta, but I got to talk about both sides here. Brandon Woodruff, if he's healthy, if he's good to go. Misarowski, we saw what he could do. Priester, Patrick. Then you get Sproat into this mix. That's a pretty good-looking rotation, even without Freddy Peralta. I'm just saying, man. I think this is good for the Brewers here. They're just going to keep the train rolling even without Peralta. I'm sure Brewers fans are sad, but I think getting upside guys like Sproat and Jet Williams, I think is going to be really good. Now, Jet Williams, where does he end up mixing in? Honestly, as of right now, you got Jake Bauers projected for left field. I know you got Garrett Mitchell here, but, I honestly could see, a situation where Williams, he figures to get into the mix, for an outfield spot. You got Frelick out there, obviously Churio, but look out for Jet Williams to maybe be in the mix for left field. Garrett Mitchell, sure, I know he's got a lot of upside, but he hasn't been able to stay on the field. So I could see Jet getting involved for, at some point. I like that. I like that a lot. But getting back here, Freddy Peralta coming off a great year. Another great year. 33 starts, just under 180 innings, ERA at a 2.70, FIP at a 3.64. The guy's thrown at least 165 innings going back the last few years, at least 30 starts per year. Good-looking ERA, solid FIP for the most part. He's going to get a good amount of strikeouts, over 10 strikeouts per 9 over the last 3 years. Sure, he can have a couple of issues with command at times. You're going to see that walk rate probably in the 3s. But, hey, you look at the Mets, I'm excited to see with the Mets. They've obviously, sure, you look at, Sean Manaea, Kadai Senga, they had some issues last year, right? But you look at what they did with Clay Holmes. You look at what they've done with David Peterson over the last couple of years. Obviously, the development of Sproat, Tongs, and McLean there. I'm excited to see if maybe the Mets can maybe get even a little bit more out of Peralta there, with what they've built. So we'll see. Within the last week, the New York Mets have added the frontline starter they needed, the big bat they needed, and the center fielder they needed. Off-seasons are long. A slow November and December does not preclude a monster January. And that's exactly what the Mets unleashed. And he makes a great point. You have to be patient, right? We still have 3.5 weeks or 3 weeks until pitchers and catchers report? That's pitchers and catchers. I know teams, they kind of want to be finalizing things here, leading into February, right? That, to me, I think is the sweet spot for most teams to get their stuff done. Going into February, you don't want to be doing these last-second moves going into spring training, right? I love this. I love this for the Mets. I think Mets fans across the land should be very excited about this addition. Freddy Peralta heading to the Mets, I think it just makes too much sense. Again, you would like to have someone with a bit more control. But, hey, you know what? Whatever. You're increasing the upside of the rotation, even if it's only for 1 year. I do expect Peralta hitting free agency. But then again, who knows? Maybe David Stearns, maybe you can sweet talk him. Hey, stick around here with the Mets for the long haul. We'd love to have you. But they'd have to come up with a good offer, right? Again, you just saw Dylan Cease getting over $200 million. I think someone like Freddy Peralta can get that as well. So, but they got a good-looking rotation here. You do wonder, do they end up moving Kadai Senga? Could you end up moving him somewhere? You kind of wonder, where is he going to be in the mix here? Do they keep him as a long guy? Do they keep him as a swingman kind of a guy? Or do they end up just moving him here, right? I'm just saying. Really like the upside of this rotation. And then, we're looking at these 6 guys here, and you still got Jonah Tong in the fold as well. So the fact that, you got him too, man, you got a lot of good starting pitching here with the Mets. Great move overall. Really like this. Really like this for the Mets. And I also like it for the Brewers too. I know it's easy to just look at the Mets point of view, but I really like this for the Brewers. It kind of fits into, what they've done here, right? Corbin Burns moved him to the Orioles. Devin Williams moved him to the Yankees. Josh Hader, they moved him before he got close to free agency. This is what the Brewers do, man. And I did think there was a possibility they could hang on to Freddy Peralta. I did. I really did, because he's, $8 million. That's not expensive. And the Brewers, they got a good team. They just made it to the NLCS. Sure, they got swept. But, hey, if there was ever a time to end up hanging on to a guy, it could have been here. But I understand it. This is what the Brewers do. But the fact that they got a guy like Sproat, sure, he's had some inconsistencies, but there is good upside with him. You get a guy like Jet Williams, who I think is a gamer. I think that guy is going to be a great ball player. I'm excited for it, man.